What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Believe in Jets podcast. I am your host, DTereman, celebrating another Jets victory, a winning streak for the first time in the Aaron Glenn era. Let's break it down 27-20 over the Cleveland Browns at home in a game that featured a lot of special players making special plays on special teams. The Browns and the Jets exchanged punts to open the game, and it immediately felt like it was going to be a low-scoring, boring, rainy day to a half-full stadium at MetLife. Some defensive changes that I immediately noticed was Mikel Walker was in at linebacker for the benched Quincy Williams. We know he was benched earlier in the week. He mentioned that to the media. And also Isaiah Oliver was in at safety for the injured Andre Sisco, who is out for the year with a shoulder injury. So Cleveland's second offensive possession was capped off with a touchdown, aided on the drive by a 29-yard defensive pass interference by A.Z. Thomas, who was on the right boundary, 29-yard defensive pass interference. And then a few plays later, there was a holding call on Jarvis Brownlee Jr. that added 5 yards to a pretty sizable Dillon Gabriel scramble. Brownlee would then later allow the touchdown in the flat to tight end David Njoku. Dillon Gabriel sold the play action. A lot of the second-level defenders, including Brownlee, bit up way too far to the line of scrimmage, and Njoku was open over his head for the opening touchdown of the game. On the ensuing kickoff, however, the New York Jets thankfully get Kene Nwangu back as their kick returner. He takes it 99 yards to the house on his very first touch since returning from his concussion, ties the ball game at 7. After forcing a 3-and-out, the Jets special teams once again makes a huge play. This time, punt returner Isaiah Williams, who is having a huge bounce back after his dreadful game against the Miami Dolphins in Week 4 in prime time, he takes it 74 yards for a touchdown, which is very fitting on a day where the Jets were celebrating the life of Nick Mangold. They had a huge pregame ceremony for him, had his family on the field before the game. They held a big flag pregame during the anthem for him as well. So 74-yard Isaiah Williams punt return touchdown, and the New York Jets take the lead 14-7 after only having 3 offensive plays. This was the first time in team history that the team scores a kick return touchdown and a punt return touchdown in the same game. So finally, the Jets are making the right kind of history in some of these ball games. Both teams then continue trading punts before the first big mistake of the game, a Justin Fields interception, while targeting Garrett Wilson on a dig route to the right side of the field. Defensive back Ronnie Hillman comes in and steals the pass. Basically an Ohio State trifecta, a former Ohio State Buckeye intercepting another former Buckeye who was targeting a former Buckeye with his pass. So not a great look, but it was Justin Fields' very first interception of the season, and many fans were actually asking for Justin Fields to be more aggressive and potentially throw interceptions, because what we were getting before that was just an unaggressive version of quarterback play. So wasn't the end of the world. It was more about how you could respond from that if you are Justin Fields. The Browns take that interception and cash it in for 6 on the very next play. Dillon Gabriel hits Jerry Jeudy on a post corner route against Brandon Stevens. And immediately the defensive backs in this game didn't look fantastic. AZ had the costly penalty. Brownlee had a ton of costly penalties. Stevens got beat for the touchdown. AZ would later leave this game with a concussion after a hit by Jamie Sherwood, which we'll get into. But it is 14-14 after the Brandon Stevens touchdown allowed. Then the Jets, however, put together their very best offensive drive of the game, an 11-play, 64-yard drive that ate up just over 6 minutes of time of possession. However, it ends up with a Nick Folk chip shot field goal to make the score 17-14. They only get into the red zone because Justin Fields was sliding and took a nasty hit. Once again, Justin Fields just can't escape the big hits to his head and neck area when he slides. This is the third or fourth unnecessary roughness penalty of this kind that Justin Fields has sustained. So that's the only reason the Jets were in the red zone this time, but they have to settle for a field goal, 17-14. Will McDonald then gets the Jets off the field with the third down sack. This was his second of the game, in which he had 4 total, which was just a ridiculous individual performance by McDonald himself, which we will get into later. Just before the half, McDonald then gets to Dillon Gabriel again for his third sack, and the Browns have to rush their field goal unit onto the field with about 8 or 9 seconds left on the clock. They managed to do so, hit the field goal, go into halftime at 17 all, which after a very ugly offensive performance, a pretty shaky defensive performance in terms of penalties and touchdowns, I think the Jets were pretty lucky to have this game at 17-7, considering the history that they had to make on special teams to do it. Coming out of the half, the Jets got the ball. Tanner Engstrand finally gets the offense on track. 6 straight runs to star Breece Hall, who was not traded at the trade deadline, despite a lot of rumors about potential tension between him and the Jets. He gets 6 straight runs to get them inside the Browns' 40-yard line. Tanner Engstrand does get a little cute here, which at times he did in this game that I didn't really agree with. He tried an end-around creative play to John Mechie, which resulted in an 8-yard loss. So facing second and long, they try a screen pass to Breece Hall on an all-out blitz. Justin Fields has backside pressure. I believe it was Grant Delpit or another defensive back was barreling down on him. He dumps it off to Breece Hall, who then takes it seemingly untouched for 42 yards and the go-ahead touchdown to make it 24-17, which was just a huge relief of a drive. It's like it's great what the Jets do when they discover their playmakers, and you could tell Tanner Engstrand discovered Breece Hall in that drive right there. 6 handoffs to him that resulted in 2 first downs, and then the 42-yard catch and run on the screen, a very well-timed screen by Tanner Engstrand. So the Jets are up 24-17. Cleveland then trying to respond with a touchdown of their own, relying heavily on their run game, get into the Jets' territory, but are ultimately faced with a 4th and 1 at the Jets' 33-yard line, opting not to take the 50-yard kick in the rain to still make it a 4-point ball game. They go for it on 4th and 1. Dillon Gabriel swallowed up in the pocket by Will McDonald for his 4th sack of the game. Ensuing play, and this was the play where it really felt like the Jets were going to start going away with this game. Breece Hall opens the drive with a 30-yard explosive run up the left sideline where he smartly stays in bounds as he's going down with the tackle. So he keeps the clock running. They later get into field goal range into the red zone, 4th and 10 at the Cleveland 19-yard line, and they settle for another Nick Folk short field goal. This one from 37 yards makes it a 2-score game, 27-17. So the Jets have a little bit of breathing room in the 4th quarter. Cleveland then responds with a field goal of their own. So back to a 1-score game, 27-20, 2 minutes and 57 seconds left on the clock, and Cleveland would not see the ball again. Thanks to some very untimely Browns defensive penalties, a defensive holding on a 3rd and 16 where Justin Fields gave himself up on a sack. They had a defensive holding against Jeremy Ruckert. Of all players, Jeremy Ruckert was not going to see the ball on 3rd and 16. So a gift-wrapped defensive holding penalty gives the Jets a fresh set of downs. And then a few plays later, they have a neutral zone infraction on a 4th and 5 where the Jets were going to punt the ball back to Cleveland and obviously give them very little time and no timeouts remaining. But 4th and 5, everybody in the stadium knew the ball was not going to be snapped by the Jets. They jump off sides, give the Jets yet another fresh set of downs, and they were able to kneel out the clock, solidifying their victory 27-20. They improved their record to 2-7 on the season. Like I mentioned, their very first winning streak under the Aaron Glenn regime. And for those watching and curious at home, they still are projected a top 5 pick in the 2026 NFL draft, but they fall from pick 2 all the way to pick number 5. They have the Tennessee Titans at 1, New Orleans Saints at 2, even though they picked up a victory today over the Panthers. the New York Giants at number 3, and the Cleveland Browns, obviously, with the Jets owning the tiebreaker, are now picking number 4. So the Jets still in the top 5, but went from 2 to 5 on the day. Now, breaking it down from side to side, offense, defense, special teams. We'll start with the defensive side first, because after you trade away guys like Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, a lot of people have questions about what exactly this defense is going to look like. You've just offloaded your 2 best players, arguably on either side of the ball. And while you did get a return of very, very good premium picks in future drafts, people are still worried about the last 9 games of this season and what we're supposed to see from a talent perspective. So without Quinnen and Sauce Gardner, the new look personnel on defense, they did a lot of Will McDonald on early downs, which was great. They had him, Harrison Phillips, newly acquired Mozzie Smith coming over from Dallas in the Quinnen Williams trade, and Jermaine Johnson. That was really their heaviest rotation of 4 down linemen at any time. They also pushed Michael Clemens into the interior role more. And something that I thought was unique that we were asking for with Quinnen Williams was they put J2 Fele on the inside, and they actually lined up Will McDonald as a 4-eye technique to the inside. So they were getting a little creative with their front 4 in terms of pass rush without their best guy anymore in Quinnen Williams. So I liked a little bit of the shakeup up front. Quincy Williams, we talked about his benching earlier in the week, and he started out the game as quote-unquote linebacker 3. Jamian Sherwood and Michael Walker started as the 2 backs in their base personnel or base nickel package. So anytime they had a 3rd linebacker on the field, Quincy was that guy. However, after 1 quarter, it very much seemed like that went away, and Quincy Williams and Jamian Sherwood were pretty much the 2 linebackers in their base nickel for the rest of the game. I don't believe Michael Walker was injured, so perhaps Quincy Williams took only 15 minutes to win his job back. And if you ask me, Quincy was the better one anyway of the 2 linebackers, of really all the linebackers in the room. So I'm not surprised that Quincy is back out on the field in short order. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Azareye'h Thomas suffered a concussion. There was an in-breaking route to Cedric Tillman, and Jamian Sherwood tried to lay a hit across the middle. He ended up catching a huge piece of AZ Thomas, and he went down with a concussion. He was ruled out a few quarters later, but he didn't return, obviously. And then they had to make even more defensive personnel shifts and changes. Jarvis Brownlee went to the boundary. Malachi Moore, their rookie do-it-all defensive back, was playing more in the slot. And then they had Isaiah Oliver and Tony Adams in as your primary 2 safeties. So with that, they did not look good in the first half defensively. Dillon Gabriel in the first half was 11 of 23, 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. The one easy one to Njoku where Brownlee was out of position, and then the one where Stevens got beat on the 22-yarder to Jerry Jeudy. So it didn't start out as a very hot game for the defensive backs, and they kind of got bailed out in the second half, in my opinion, by the Jets pass rush. They were just taking advantage of the Browns offensive line. Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson were feasting on the Browns offensive tackles for much of this game, and it really dialed up in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Will McDonald obviously finishes with 4 sacks. Quincy got himself a sack, and he finished it off with the signature Quinnen Williams sack dance, which was paying cool homage to his brother. And then JJ gets a sack. So the Jets defense finishes with 6 sacks in the game. So it was really the pass rush getting going in this game against, a very questionable Browns offensive line. We won't mistake that. We're not going to pretend like the Browns are a very good offense and very explosive offense, but the edges taking advantage of the tackles was huge. And like I said, Will McDonald playing earlier downs on 1st and 2nd down a lot. He was really blowing up plays. And if an offense is playing behind the sticks, right, 2nd and 13, 3rd and 16s, which the Browns were seeing a ton, that is the game script where Will McDonald's able to pin his ears back and go. You saw as soon as the Jets had a 17-14 lead, Will McDonald was getting them off the field on 3rd down via sacks. So I was really impressed by Will McDonald and the pass rush in this game. I like the creativity from Steve Wilkes. We'll give him some credit, trying to get his best four, front four on defensive line, and then mixing it up and being creative when he did send pressures and extra blitzers. So all in all, a good game from the defense after what was a shaky start, allowing the 2 quick touchdowns by Dylan Gabriel. Switching over to the offensive side, very, very sluggish start. Again, felt like one of those stinker Justin Fields performances, and the box score doesn't really tell much of a better story for Justin Fields. He finishes the game 6 of 11 passing, 54 total yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. When you take out the 3 sacks for 12 yards, he had a net passing of 42 yards. So literally it comes down to the Breece Hall touchdown pass on the screen is all of the actual yards Justin Fields acquired through the air. Everything else was negated by sacks. So very sluggish performance by the offense. Garrett Wilson doesn't get a target in the first half. He ends with, I think, 3 targets. He leaves the game after a deep target down the left sideline. His right knee is bothering him. He goes limping off. He does not return to the game. Mason Taylor didn't get a first half target. He ended with, I believe, 1 catch for 4 yards, 1 in-breaking route on 2 targets. It was a very good, a very impressive, strong-handed catch by Mason Taylor, but you got to get this guy more involved. Breece Hall missing in the first half, and it's not his fault. He had 6 carries for 29 yards, absolutely no targets in the first half. They kept swapping him out for Isaiah Davis on 3rd down, which if Garrett Wilson is hobbled and he's in on 3rd down, Breece Hall needs to be in on 3rd down. It's just unacceptable. They finally figured out in the second half, they allowed Breece, multiple carries in a row. They started feeding Breece. They gave him 7 touches on that drive, and he puts them ahead with a touchdown on those 7 touches. So you have to continue to feed Breece. He ends with 21 carries, 83 yards for a 4.0 average. He only has 1 catch on his single target for 42 yards. I understand it was raining. Justin Fields was not really asked to pass a ton. He had 6 pass attempts in the first half and 5 pass attempts in the second half. Not really, winning, because of your quarterback play. You're kind of winning in spite of your quarterback play in this game here. But obviously, given the weather elements and the fact that you want to run the ball as much as you can with Breece and no Garrett Wilson, you kind of understand it. But again, if this game was flipped in terms of the result, we would very much be questioning why the hell Justin Fields was returning in that second half after looking pretty abysmal in that first half. The interception, obviously, he had -5 net passing yards in the first half, a 16.7 rating while passing. So it was definitely getting close to Tyrod Taylor time, in my opinion, in that first half. So second half, they find Breece. They allow him to do his thing. They get the lead. They don't surrender the lead after they take the lead, which is great. Usually the defense of the past, the first 7 weeks of the season, they would probably have allowed some kind of answer by the Cleveland Browns, whether it was a quick touchdown or a long touchdown drive that brought it back to a 3-point game. Instead, when they had a 10-point lead, they kept it, a 7+ point lead. They only allowed a field goal, and it made it 27-20, but then they were never going to give the ball back offensively. So a good complementary game down the stretch. Again, the Jets are trying to pull out these complete team victories, and although the offense was very lackluster, they kind of put it all together with the run game and that final screen, plus the defense getting off the field on 3rd down with their sacks. It was a very good complementary game. Now you add in the third element and the most important element of this game, and probably the only reason that the Jets were close to winning and had the chance to win it, special teams. When you come to play at this level, it's going to turn games. It's going to change the results of games outright. And that's exactly what happened today. You get 14 points off kick return and punt return touchdowns, and Wangu and Isaiah Williams are just, electric players with the ball in their hand. It's pretty special what they were able to do on both their returns, and Wangu breaking a couple tackles, and Isaiah Williams, again, seemingly untouched, much like the Breece Hall touchdown. It was like he found his lane. He made one or two guys miss, and he was off to the races. So 2 touchdowns by special teams. And then you had Austin McNamara, who pinned a punt inside the 5-yard line early on in this game. It was downed by Quantez Stiggers, and I believe the Browns were able to score on that drive, but still you're able to, be a complete special teams unit. Nobody is really lacking. Nick Folk made all his kicks. He didn't miss any of his second half field goals. I understand it was a chip shot from 26 and 37 yards, but he hit all his point afters as well, and the field goal in the first half. So everybody on special teams came to play. Chris Banjo definitely deserves his flowers, special teams coordinator. So you're starting to see signs, right, of a complementary football team. And despite the talent that was let go of and traded away this week, the Jets are still able to perform as a team for the most part, right? Obviously, offense needs to rebound in a short week and really put themselves together and show themselves as a formidable unit against the New England Patriots on Thursday night. But this version of the defense where, yes, they allow some penalties, some aggressive penalties in terms of holding and DPI, not really boneheaded penalties in terms of roughing the passers and unnecessary roughness and late hits. And, the pass rush finally coming along with 6 sacks this game. You want to see that continue. And I think you might actually have something with this defensive unit for the rest of this season. Obviously, offense is a complete work in progress. A.D. Mitchell was inactive this game, so we'll see if the Jets get him up to speed by Thursday against New England. The 2 biggest injuries that we will be watching very closely, A.Z. Thomas with the concussion, he was ruled out. My assumption is he's not going to clear the concussion protocol before the Thursday game against New England, so we might not see A.Z. Thomas until the Baltimore game the week prior. And Garrett Wilson with the right knee, he obviously comes limping off the field, and he was ruled out in the second half. We'll see how he progresses during the week. Again, a short turnaround before they go to New England. So not really excited for the outlook on either of those 2 in terms of their status for Thursday's game, but we will keep it close to hear what AG has to say in the pressers as far as their injury updates. Keep it here. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Believe in Jets podcast. I am Dylan Tereman saying, let's go Jets.